Inchakapatubhischa, Kripasinduevicha, Patichanam Pavanabhyo, Vaishnavabhyo, Namanamaha. Om again, Tinamandasya, Ganjana Svakya, Chakshur Militamina, Tashme Shri Guru Maha. Chinada Pisunichana, Tarora Pisahishnuna, Amanina Manadina, Kitni Sadahari, Tatenukampam Susamikshamano, Bunjanaivakma Kritam, Vipakam, Hitvak Bakupi Vididam Namaste, Jivatayo Mukti Sataya Bak, Vachavegam, Manasakrodavegam, Jivavegam, Udaro Pashtavegam, Hitam Vegam Yo Vishaheta Drisha Dira, Savam Apiman, Pritavim Sa Shishyat, Anyablasta Sunyam, Gyan Kamadia Navritam, Anukalenya Krishna Shilanam, Bhaktutama. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Good evening, or good afternoon, or perhaps even good morning to my beloved God brothers and God sisters, God fathers and mothers, uncles, aunties, God first cousins and second cousins, God nieces, nephews, sons and daughters. Thank you for joining us for Ayurveda, Health, Ayurveda and Bhakti. This is our second session. Last week we had a beautiful exposition on where the knowledge of Ayurveda comes from, the importance that our health is for our spiritual life, and a general context for the entire subject to give us a segue into the practical. I suppose last week you could say we had the theory, the concept, the structure, the framework, the reference to the original Vedas, and this week is all about the practical, the application, how to actually take charge of our health in a spiritually conscious way. I thought, by way of an introduction today, before I hand over to our speaker for tonight, I just wanted to say a few words on this subject, which is very dear to my heart, because I've actually, in my life, struggled to take full responsibility for my physical health. And it's only been as a result of last year being diagnosed with cancer that it gave me enough of a shock to take real responsibility on all areas of my health. And as a result, I've managed to cure my diabetes 2 and my cancer. I say I've managed to cure it. Actually, Gurudev has, because everything I did was by the mercy of Lord Nityananda and by Gurudev's kripa. Any inspiration I had to take action came from that source. And I can firmly say that practicing Krishna consciousness holds you in very good stead in terms of dealing with what for most people is a very serious crisis. Actually, instead of being a crisis, it turns into an opportunity, both a spiritual and a material opportunity, and a very inspired one. But in terms of context, as human beings, we're evolving from humans having a human experience, and then we may evolve into humans having maybe a spiritual experience. And some people say perhaps we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Ultimately, of course, we want to be spiritual beings having a spiritual experience. And to move along that place of evolution, to move to a greater sense of awareness, to move closer to that verse that I invoked, Anyablasta Sunyam Gyan Kamadena Vritam, Anukalenya Krishna Shilam Bhakta Uttama, be one pointedly devoted without cessation to the service, to the pleasure of Radha and Krishna, to get to that point of ultimately being a spiritual being, having only a spiritual experience. We're moving through a process of spiritual ontological evolution. And that evolution requires two, if you like, external agents. One, as exemplified or as expressed very beautifully through the Damodar Astakam story. One aspect is that we are looking for, we have to endeavor, we have to do something, we cannot be passive. And on the other hand, we have the beautiful agency of mercy or grace. So endeavor and grace, they work together. And grace is the mercy that gets us to the platform of spiritual realization, is really what we're hankering for. That is the primary agent that creates the transformation within us as human beings, to rid of us of our faults, and to infuse us and to help us self-realize our Swarup, our real spiritual eternal form. So in order to be in that circle of grace, in order to feel that grace, in order to connect to grace, in order to imbibe grace, in order to have relationship with grace that is coming all the way from Radha and Krishna, through all the acharyas, the parampara, through our very Gurudev into our hearts, in order for us to hear that soft whisper of the caressing nature of grace, the beautiful whisper of grace, we have to be attuned to grace. We have to be able to listen to her calling. And how do we listen to her calling? We listen to her calling by having a very stable mind. But the mind is a very subtle and flickering substance, and can easily get like a kite on the seashore when the wind takes up. It can go everywhere, hither and thither. How many times when we do our sadhana does our mind move through 1,000 paces? How many times when we're trying to focus on anything does our mind wander all over the place? In order to really have a deep, deep relationship with Gaunitai and with Radha and Krishna, we need our minds to be very stable and hearing and be attuned to the calling of grace. And this is where health comes into it, because we are, whether we like it or not, the reality is our soul is glued to our gross body, our external body, through the subtle body. And the subtle body, which is composed of the false ego, the mind and the intelligence, and our conditioned consciousness, the subtle body is hugely impacted by what we eat, how we eat, when we eat, the consciousness with which we eat, all of these things. Our nutrition, which is a complex process, and for us to understand that is an intrinsic part of bhakti, to understand how to apply nutritional information so that we can really look after not only our gross body but our subtle body, so that our mind can be really stable and our intelligence can be laser sharp, to be a good counsel to the mind, so that we can do things that are favorable to bhakti and give up things that are unfavorable to bhakti in a very conscious way. So this is the intrinsic practical element of health, that not only can we live longer, which gives us more of a chance to evolve in our bhakti, but when we get to old age, we can actually do our sadhana really well because we've got good health. But all along the way, starting right now, it's not just an investment for tomorrow. And for some of you who are like in your 20s, the idea of being old is some kind of dream that happens to other people, and it will catch up on us one day. But if you're in your 20s or 30s, it's hard to consider this concept. But actually taking charge of one's health right now, here and now, will have direct impact on your mind and on your intelligence, and will make you stronger and better and sharper in your endeavor to progress in Krishna consciousness, and will make you more receptive to the calling of grace through your Gurudev, so that you can advance in your bhakti and you can live very happily in your life and very successfully. So those are just my thoughts on health, but I want to hand over to an actual expert as opposed to a neophyte on these matters. I'm the recipient of the wisdom of people like the next speaker, and I'm very, very excited to introduce to you Shriman Nimai Caitanya Prabhu, who has kindly agreed to share his wisdom accumulated over many years of practicing in his successful clinic on the east coast of America. And he has written quite a tome of a book called Total Life Cleanse, which is the aggregation, all that accumulated, not just knowledge, but realization from practicing on himself and practicing on, I imagine, thousands and thousands and thousands of clients. He's a very knowledgeable bhakta, as well as a great Ayurvedic specialist and healer, and a very sensitive and beautiful human being that is there to help and serve other people. So Prabhu, I'm very happy that you've agreed to present to our holistic bhakti group tonight, and I hand over to you now to share with us some of your heart and your brain. Haribol, Dandavat Pranams.
Haribol. Thank you so much, Yashoda Prabhu. Beautifully. I was listening with so much rapt attention and so much appreciating not only all the service you've been doing, but also the insights that you've been sharing. And I'll have to share with you later. Some of them have been super meaningful to me. So I will do that with you at some point. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for coming, and thank you for this opportunity. You know, I've been teaching to my students and patients for a number of years, and only rarely do I have the opportunity to speak to a larger group of devotees on these topics. And it's something that has been close to my heart and a desire that I've had for a long time, because I felt like it was it's an important piece of information for devotees as we, travel our sojourn through our spiritual lives and through our lives in this world, and how to navigate topics of health, and how these things not just affect our, the disease process, but how we think and how we feel physically, mentally, emotionally, and how that all connects to bhakti. And I think it's a really valuable topic to have solid discussions every once in a while. So on that note, Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatame Shri Shrimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayani Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pastatadeshtam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavranda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Panchakalpa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhyacha Patitam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo. I'd like to offer my Dandavat Pranams Nityalila Pravishnu Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev, Nityalila Pravishnu Stotra Sattva Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, to all of our gurus and acharyas, to the sannyasis here, to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, and everyone here. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Dhanyavad. So I just have, I think, 20 minutes to discuss a few things. And like I mentioned, this is a really significant topic, and that something, I lived in temples in the 80s and the 90s, early 90s, late 80s. And coming from a health orientation before I joined the temple, it was in some ways quite a shock to be living in that environment where at the time there was so little emphasis on health, and there was so much of an abundance of sugar and so much eating dairy, and I had a very strong dairy sensitivity, and so eating sugar and dairy and wheat every day, I mean, I was like I had gone from pretty much giving up dairy before that, and then when I became a devotee, it was very, very challenging. So I had a lot of health issues when I was living in the temple, and I had to sort of navigate and figure things out. And then when I started really studying Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and nutrition and started doing cleanses, I had a lot of experiences of improving my health. And also I started thinking about, my life in the temple, and also thinking about the health condition of a lot of different devotees that they were going through. And as the years rolled on, I was seeing so many devotees having issues with diabetes and obesity and cardiovascular disease and cancer and things like that. Of course, these are, in some sense, this is part of having a material body. But in another sense, it was clear that some of these things were, in one sense, premature. That, yes, there's karma, but when we also act in such a way, when we're ignoring certain very fundamental health principles, it causes a lot of problems. So I'm going to talk to you just for a minute about some of the essential principles of Ayurveda that Bhagwat Maharaj mentioned last week. But this is something that I always teach in my cleanse. And I tell people this is the foundation of the cleanse itself. And so that people can have a broader understanding of what health is, and that, I'm often speaking to people that are just beginning to get that they're not the body, or it's a new concept for them. But having said that, I find that for devotees, it's still good to hear these things, even though they may seem a little mundane. It's important to have these reminders from time to time. It's not that we want to be meditating on our health 24 hours a day and not giving enough time for sadhana. And that's something that I actually wanted to talk about at some point. But the first principle, really, there's basically 5 principles of Ayurveda. The first thing is to recognize actually the pillars of health, which is called the 3 pillars, which is related to the diet and digestion and foods that are favorable and unfavorable. So this is a very fundamental thing. Sleep is another thing. And sometimes we have different conceptions of what we should be doing and what's important for us in terms of maintaining our bhakti and maintaining the body-mind connection in a healthy way. So we can talk about sleep a little bit. Then also desire, sexuality and desire. So how does that fit into our lives as devotees? But those are considered 3 pillars. So any aberration or any real sincere, significant derangement from how we eat, how we sleep, and how we manage sexual energy, and also just craving in this world, that will create an imbalance in the doshas and also in the elements that make us up, the earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So the first thing is we start from those cells, prana, which is vital life energy. And I'm working with prana all the time because I do acupuncture also, and it's really the vital life energy, the bioelectric energy that runs through the body. And there's many ways prana moves, but there's 5 basic pranas. It's kind of like it's the prana shakti. It's how energy moves through the body. So there's the upward moving prana that literally is the prana that keeps us upright. There's a downward moving prana that helps everything go down with elimination, grounding, letting go of negativity. And also all of these things have physical, mental, emotional correspondences. So, the ability to eliminate, defecate, to pee and to poop. So that's a physical thing, but also the ability to let go physically, mentally, emotionally. This is also having to do with the apana prana. So then there's the digestive prana, how energy moves in the digestion. That's all. How do we harmonize? How do we integrate? How do we take things in life, and how do we digest them and assimilate them and turn them into wisdom and life experience? And then there's the Vyana prana, which is the outward moving prana that has to do with circulation, the blood flow, the chi moving through the body, and moving outward. So it's an outward circulation of energy. It also has to do, you could say that it has to do with the Chinese call it the Wei Qi. It's the chi that is beyond the surface of the body. It's that expanding energy of that prana. Some people have a very weak Vyana prana, so they would be more vulnerable to external pathogens, whether it's, sometimes you walk into a room with a lot of negative energy, someone who has very weak chi or prana in that way, they may take it on significantly. Or other people, they're very unaffected by negative energy. And also even with pathogens, if our chi, if our Wei Qi and our Vyana prana is very weak, then we would be more vulnerable to a virus or a bacteria or something like that. So it's important to be strong in that way. And then there's the upward moving prana, like I mentioned, and then there's prana, which is the inward moving. So most people don't even know, we know as devotees, but most people don't even know that we can direct our energy inward. I mean, it's an amazing thing that people out there really don't even know that we can put our attention inward, that's a reality. So it's prana. So that's the prana of the energy that the senses take in, but it's also the ability to direct our energy inward. We can direct our energy Actually, we can close our eyes and direct it anywhere physically. We go also direct it right into the heart if we want. So, so these pranas are very, very important, and how that energy moves can be disturbed, because remember, prana is feeding all the cells and all the tissues and every aspect of our body with vital life force. And if that gets disturbed, which we'll talk about in a second, by various things. So the other thing, energy is Agni. Agni is the power of transformation. And it's really the protector, because the Agni has the capacity to take in, to transform it, and really either utilize it, transform, a piece of broccoli into, the 7 tissues of the body, or if it's a toxin of some kind, or a part of that that's not useful, to pass it on and let it go. So Agni is very powerful in that way. It's the power of transformation. So that leads again to one of the pillars, which is about food and digestion. So it's so important. Digestion, in one sense, is the core of everything. How do we take it in? But also, how do we transform things? How do we, the fire of transformation also impacts the mind and the emotion. How do you transform an experience? In Ayurveda, one thing that's said is one of the main causes of emotional disorders are undigested experiences. So if a child is abused in some way, when they're very young, they're not able to digest that. And in fact, the child will often think somehow it's my fault, and they may unconsciously be thinking that most of their life, until somehow they become aware of it. So digesting is very, very important, whether it's physical, mental, emotional digestion. And then, of course, as devotees, we are meant to digest the teachings of our spiritual master. And that's also that's a part of the digestion process. Ojas is the essence of all of our tissues. It's really the core essence. It's said to exist within the heart and within the testes and the ovaries. It's the most essential fundamental energy. It really has a lot to do with our immune system as well, in the sense that it's really discerning what is of this body and what is not, what is actually good for me, what is not. So it's the strength that gives us strength. So ojas, some people come in with very strong ojas. I mean, this is part of their constitution. And some people come in with a weaker ojas. And so there's different things that we can do to cultivate ojas, or at least to not lose it. So for example, somebody who misuses a sexual energy, even if they have strong ojas, eventually they'll disperse so much that they'll become very weak. So and another person who may have low ojas, and if they misuse sexual energy, they're going to experience much more negative impact earlier in life because of that. And then I'd just like to touch on the two, to make sure I'm not missing the two causes of disease. And we could say very simply that the cause of disease is when prana, agni, and ojas become disturbed or deranged or weakened in some way. And how does that happen? First, by ama, or toxin. And toxin can be a physical toxin that comes in from the outside world. And we know there's a ton of that. There's 80,000 chemicals in the environment or over, and only 20,000 have ever been tested for human safety. And they've never been tested synergistically. I mean, when people sweat, they have hundreds, if not thousands, of chemicals that are found in the sweat. So we're living in Kali Yuga right now. And so it's a very, very toxic environment. And we're being exposed to things that, at least since the last Kali Yuga, I don't imagine we've been exposed to, or maybe even not that previous Yuga, who knows? So ama, but also ama can be not just physical, but a mental, emotional ama, like all the things that we see with our eyes in Kali Yuga, all the things that we hear through our senses. We also have to transform that. And there's a point where we can't transform it anymore, where the small intestine has to discern what nutrients do I take in and what nutrients do I pass on to the large intestine. So there's a discernment. And when we're exposed externally by so many different sounds and images and stimulating things through all of our senses, it disturb the Agni. It can disturb the small intestine. And one reason you could argue that so many people have digestive problems is because they're processing so many things all the time, right? And they're not able to digest life. Life is very difficult to digest these days. It's, again, Kali Yuga, and it's very, very intense in many, many ways. So again, that leads to the benefits of our practice and the importance of a really, really solid sadhana, even just from that perspective of being able to digest and purify ourselves from the contamination of Kali Yuga. I mean, it is the Yuga Dharma. We know there's all the internal reasons that Krishna came in the form of Caitanya Mahaprabhu to fulfill his innermost desires. And it's always, to me, it's always helpful to really remember this is the Yuga Dharma. This is the sacrifice for this age. This is the perfect process for Kali Yuga. It makes all that, fight fire with fire. In this age, we're fighting sound with sound, and sound is the most subtle element. And in Kali Yuga, the whole ether element is completely contaminated. So this Harinam mantra, Hare Krishna mantra, is the most powerful mantra that we can be chanting, and is especially beneficial in Kali Yuga by the mercy of Mahaprabhu. So then the last thing I'd like to touch on is it's considered the original cause of disease. And of course, as devotees, we know that it goes beyond this. But it's the word pragyaparad, and pragyaparad means when we ignore our own knowledge and experience. So how many times have we done something that's caused suffering and we do it again? This is pragyaparad. It's aparad, we know, offend, pragya, knowledge, experience, when we offend it, when we don't honor it, when we don't listen to it. And you could argue, okay, that's related to your common sense, it's related to your intuition, it's related to your innate intelligence. The word buddhi, right? We have buddhi, we have innate intelligence. We're born with innate intelligence. But when we ignore our common sense, our intuition, our experience, our knowledge, when we ignore it, then it's pragyaparad. We're offending ourselves. And of course, the word radha is in there too. We're offending when we ignore these messages that we're getting. We're actually, you could even say we're offending Krishna. We're offending Radha by ignoring messages that we're the do's and the don'ts. How should we live? How should we eat? These things like that. So pragyaparad is very important. But a more mundane example would be a child being a victim of that, where say he's a little boy and his father is forcing him to finish the food on his plate. And he doesn't want it, he's full, he has a stomach ache, he doesn't want to eat, but his father has some, value that you have to finish everything on your plate. So the little boy has to make a decision and decide whether, okay, either I get a stomach ache and my father won't be mad at me, or I don't get a stomach ache, but my father is very mad at me and he yells at me. So that's a tough decision for a 4-year-old kid. So maybe he decides, I'm just going to keep eating until he's satisfied, and then I won't get yelled at. So then over time, that little boy loses his sense of his innate intelligence. He's bypassed the innate intelligence of his body enough times that he loses touch with this satiety and sense of being satisfied. So then maybe he goes on to be an overeater and has to struggle with weight his whole life. So in that sense, he's a victim of an adult in his life or an authority in his life that co-created that pragyaparad, that habit that really went against him. So then, of course, we can argue, okay, that's his karma to have a father like that, blah blah blah. But that's pragyaparad can start from other people encouraging us to ignore the natural signals in the body, and these things are just there. They're part of common sense, and they're part of natural urges of the body, and these things are important to acknowledge. So it's really beneficial to have a parent who is respectful of a child's bodily needs and urges and things like that, so that it helps the kid, the child, stay tuned in to their innate intelligence. Here's another more subtle one where, say the parents are fighting a lot and the child sees it, he's perceiving it, he's witnessing it, he knows something's not quite right, but then the parents keep telling the child, no, everything's fine. Everything's absolutely fine. What you're seeing is not real. So then what happens? Eventually the child starts not trusting their own perception. So many people go through their life not trusting what they're seeing because they've been told again and again that what they're seeing isn't true. Even some children see spirits. They'll see, they may see ghosts, they may see different entities in the environment and a parent, or they may have a psychic perception of something. And a parent or an adult or an authority will say, no, that's not true. That's not accurate. You're making it up. It's an imagination. So then the child loses their ability to actually trust that. And so they have to, if they're fortunate later in life, they realize what happened and they can reconnect to that intuitive ability where they had to lose it for a long time because they were told it wasn't real. Then it becomes very confusing and very difficult to judge what's really happening in their life and their relationships around their health, things like that. So those are the, basic core principles that I think of when I'm working with people. And I really try to, and one thing is, most of you know, maybe not everybody, but knows the doshas, vata, pitta, kapha. When prana becomes deranged, it manifests as a deranged vata, because prana is related to vata. And when when agni becomes deranged, it becomes a derangement of pitta. And when the ojas becomes deranged in some way, then that can be a manifestation of excess kapha. So there's a direct connection with these. So when looking at our own lives, we can look at, okay, how much common sense how much am I following my own innate intelligence, my own buddhi, this innate intelligence that's God-given, that we all come in with. We all have it. My common sense, my intuition, my knowing. How much am I acknowledging it? How much am I ignoring it? How often do I just completely keep doing something that I know isn't healthy for me? Maybe someone says it is healthy for you and you keep doing it. Years ago, I was trying so hard to make dairy healthy for me. And, I just couldn't do it. Now I have found a form of dairy that I can eat in small degrees. But, I was getting myself sicker and sicker because I just had some bad karma that I'm very sensitive to it. I almost died twice as an infant, in oxygen tents and, because my mother didn't breastfeed and they were giving me bottled milk. So there were some big issues there. And so later in life, when I realized that dairy was a big problem for me, I stopped it. My whole life changed. And then when I became a devotee, I started with dairy again. And I had to really, navigate that topic. It was a big issue for me. And I would honor it, but there were times because I love dairy, I would have way too much of it. And I was getting sick a lot. I was constantly congested, constantly coughing, constantly going on antibiotics every year because I wasn't managing that reality. So, I think that's about 20 minutes right now. Is that right? So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to share more, but I really wanted to make this as an opportunity for people to ask questions. And the main thing is, how is this relevant to you as a devotee and practicing? For us, and even for the people that I work with, my goal is always like, how can we use our health and this knowledge, this beautiful wisdom of Ayurveda, and like I said, I do a lot with Chinese medicine as well, which is given to us by Krishna. It's in this world for a reason. This knowledge is here as a way to support us so that we can go through life and ultimately practice bhakti in as a healthy way as possible. The goal of life is not health. We know that. And I'm 60 now, and I'm getting it more now than ever. But if we can get through our life feeling pretty good physically and mentally most of the time and avoid diseases for the most part as much as possible. I mean, it's one thing if it's our karma is bound to happen. It's another thing if, you know, there's certain things you can't control. You may be living in an environment where there's a lot of toxins in the water and the air, and you just can't control certain things. But there are things we can do to minimize these things. So my feeling is we can do the best we can without letting our health become a huge distraction, so that we can focus on our spiritual life, focus on our material responsibilities, and focus even, you know, most importantly, on our spiritual life. And like Yashoda was saying, I mean, you know, it's difficult to really chant clearly if your head is congested and your nose is running with mucus. You know, it's just, when you feel it like that, it's not easy to, you know, it's not easy to read. It's not easy to hear. It's not even easy to chant. It certainly isn't easy to dance. So it's, these things are really important. So I guess I'll end it here. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to, or comments or like that.
I put a message in the chat. Can you hear me?
Who are you even talking to?
Yep.
I'm muting myself.
Who's speaking? I can't see who's speaking.
Yeah, who's speaking?
I don't know.
Madhu in Hawaii.
This is Haribo. Thank you.
Tarun, that's Madhu in Hawaii, by the way.
Okay. We'll get to your question in a moment. I just firstly want to say thank you so much for coming last week and coming this week. Shriman Nimai Caitanya Prabhu, thank you for speaking. Particularly like
This is like the moderator or some stuff.
I particularly liked your comments about Pragya Aparad, about this idea of the offense to not listen to the intuition of your body. I think that's a really interesting concept. In fact, I first heard about it indirectly from you because Hare Krishna Prabhu was telling me about this concept, and I think he learned largely about it from you. So yeah, it's really, really fascinating to hear more about it, and I want to learn more about it because sometimes I feel these intuitions coming, but I feel they're covered or not so clear. So to get more in tune with that sort of health would be really interesting. So we've got a lot of questions. I'm going to post a link again for submitting questions. I'm getting a few people personally messaging me, and that's fine. And I might still pick your question, but it's less likely because I've got all of these different questions and they go way up the chat very quickly. Whereas if you submit them via the link, I can see the question just there alongside all of the other questions. So I'm really encouraging everyone to submit via the link. I've just posted the link again. We have a lot of questions, a lot of really interesting questions. So get your questions in now.
Tarun, someone's saying that they don't understand how to use the link. You might just want to step people through that.
Okay, so it's very easy. You just go to the link, you click on the link, or you copy and paste the link. You put it into your browser, and then a box comes up. You type your question into the box, and then you click submit, and then your question is submitted. Is Bhagavat Maharaj trying to get our attention?
He's waving his hands around. Maharaj, you're on mute.
They don't understand which link he's talking about.
Yeah, because Tarun, not everyone understands Zoom chat.
Okay, you have to go to the.
And then you look on the side where they have all the chats. And there on the side where they have the chats, you'll see a statement by Tarun Krishnadas to everyone saying, please submit all your questions below. And at the bottom of that message, there's a link That's the link you have to click on to submit your question.
Okay. Wow. All of a sudden, a lot of questions have flooded in. Okay.
But the link doesn't work as a link. It only works if you copy and paste it from, you copy it from the chat and then you paste it in a browser, then it'll work. Otherwise, if you just click on it, it doesn't take you anywhere.
I just clicked on it and it did work.
It depends. For some people, it
It
won't
depends,
work.
yeah. Depends on the
Loom
browser.
underline, then it will work. Okay. Anyway, in that chat message, there's also a little bit of text that says, if you have any problems, you can message me personally. So anyone else with any problems, message me personally. Okay, so we're gonna go to the first question.
I thought Maharaj was wiping his laptop.
Okay. Terrible. Okay. The first question is, I'm really fascinated by this topic, but I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of the information, all of these technical terms that I have no familiarity with. What is the first step, or what are the first 1-2 steps that I can take to begin to take control over my health?
Okay, great. Well, let's come back to the pillars, which is, what you're eating, how you're sleeping, and how we're managing desires. But really the first one is what we put in the body. It's because it's something that we do every day. And I mean, and there's so many things to say on that, but yes, there's the individual body types that we have, or the dosha. Dosha means fault, actually. So it's, dosha means the disease tendency, or how we tend to go out of balance as a person individually. And yes, there are foods that are better for different dosha types than others. There's no doubt about that. So getting to know yourself is important. So that would be one thing you could do. But the other thing is, and I don't know, I mean, there's all kinds of people, maybe even on this call, devotees on this call. Some are much more aware of, the food and the quality of food they put in their body, and others might not be. So I really don't know, what the audience is, because, you can make an assumption with a group and it's always pretty much wrong. There's all kinds of people, and there's all kinds of devotees, as we know, from different perspectives. But I do know, and again, I might be a little bit outdated because I was around years ago in the temple scene, but there tended to be a bit of a lack of acknowledgement and respect for the realities of the physical body. And so ignoring certain things like, if you give me a bunch of wheat and sugar, in about 20 minutes, I will be yawning and I'll probably be grumpy. That's just what it does to me. So I noticed that many years ago, and even in the temple, I was
Hello? We lost him there.
He must have eaten some sugar.
Okay.
He's totally frozen. I'm sure he'll come back.
Let me say something here while we're waiting.
Great idea, Marsh. Nice one.
He was talking before about something that Srila Bharti Maharaj actually brought up, which again shows the confluence between Bhakti and Ayurveda. And Srila Bharti Maharaj was talking about that that Maya comes in through all the senses. And so your sense of touch, if you misuse it, your sense of sight, if you misuse it, your sense of speech and smell and hearing, if it's misused, then you get spiritual indigestion. You don't, you're not able to digest all that maya. Remember, he was talking about the inability to digest all of the impressions. These are called samskars. And so there's so many samskars, you know, and he's talking about some simple practical things which are part of the family dynamic in terms of how a child responds to his parents. But it's not just that, you know, unfortunately, in today's world, it's not just a personal dynamic between the child and the parents. Although I have a lot to say about that concerning my own personal life. but it also has to do with the sensory overload that we have from the television, from the gaming, from the computer, from all of this stuff, this constant overload. Our eyes, our ears, the music that we hear, the sounds, everything. And this is why we find when we get away to like a country setting, like going to Badger, and we're just hearing kirtan and harikatha and nature sounds, and there's no, you know, elevator music or blaring radios in the street or televisions or this or that or all that stuff that we're constantly being bombarded into our senses, then it becomes, you know, indigestible. And when we're there in a place like Badger, then everything calms down, everything relaxes, and we can process all of that excess that we've accumulated, you know. And so, you know, Bharti Maharaj was talking about the same thing, but in terms of the spirit digestion, how you digest sense gratification through your eyes, your ears, your nose, your voice, your sense of touch. That sense gratification can be absorbed in so many ways, and that those impressions overload the senses. And as we talked about, I talked about last week, and he talked about again, things descend from the subtle platform to the gross platform. And the indigestion begins there, then it becomes indigestion in your diet. You're not able, your small intestines are not able to digest the food. It becomes ama, and then according to your karma, it settles into your joints or your lungs or your whatever part of your body is appointed to for you to suffer with in this particular lifetime according to your actions or inactions. And hence, these are the problems. So I just thought I wanted to bring that up. But, you know, your point about the three pillars, I think it's hard for a devotee, and this is just my personal experience, to balance what he eats, what he does, what kind of sensory input he gets, etc., without an analysis of his constitution to know which foods to eat and which foods not to eat. It's one thing when you have an obvious allergy like you have, but some people don't necessarily have an allergy. Some people just shouldn't be eating wheat, but that's what they're eating instead of, you know, something else, or they shouldn't, you know, based on their Ayurvedic constitution, or they're eating vata food. If I had 10 cents for every patient that I ever had that came to me who said, but I'm eating organic raw salads every day, and they're like total vata'd out, so much vata, and they're eating all these raw foods, which is just making their vata go crazy. And they're just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And they're, but I'm eating raw organic food. You know, sometimes what we think is best is worse for our constitution because we just don't understand how our constitution is working or how the imbalance is affecting us. We could be a particular constitution and have a very strong imbalance of vata or pitta or whatever it may be. You know? Just that one of those things in Ayurveda you've seen real quick, where there's inflammation, there's pitta. Where there's obstruction, there's excess kapha. And where there's pain, vata. So if you're experiencing pain, you know that there's some vata disorder. If you're experiencing inflammation, you know there's a pitta disorder. And if you're experiencing some obstruction anywhere, you know that that's a kapha disorder. Those are three fundamental rules which can help you to at least identify the basic. More from you, Mr.
So I was just going to say thank you. I'm sorry that I got disconnected. So thanks for, but I heard everything you were saying, but glad I put this other one up. I was answering that first question, and part of it was just, avoid as much as possible, avoid the crap. I mean, I don't know what devotees, but it's amazing the low quality of some of the food that's out there, and quality matters. It really does matter, and nobody really benefits. It has a drug-like effect. It's very addictive, and a lot of people get in trouble from eating too much sugar. And there's sort of a culture, at least in this con there was, and I heard, and Bhagavad Maharaj, maybe you know the tattva or the siddhanta on this, but the Prabhupada ultimately wanted us to feast once a week, and other than that, for the rest of the week, culture of the movement and so much preaching and so many events and so many programs, you always want to have nice prasads, so sometimes that's difficult, but in principle, as practicing devotees, it's better to eat simple, and then also, like I mentioned, Maharaj was saying, is to have a one-on-one assessment with someone. That's really important. But also tune into, if you eat something and it makes you feel tired, sluggish, weak, dull-headed, any of those things, that's when we have to not be in denial that, okay, so-and-so said this was really good for me, but it makes me feel bad. Or it just makes me feel bad. I really like it, but it makes me feel bad. Mm-hmm. You know how many female clients in their 50s I have who said, I heard wine was really good for you. I don't know why, my 3 glasses of wine, I'm just not, I think it's fine. And then they stop drinking wine and their whole life changes. It's also with coffee. I mean, I have some people who drink 4, 5, 6 cups of coffee a day. And when they end up either stopping it or having just a touch, they end up having more energy in their life rather than less, because it creates such a derangement in their body and the elements of the body. So, if nothing else, simplify. And, our own introspection and our own experience has value, but even better is to find a practitioner that you can work with that can help, that can actually see some things and help you get clearer on at least some very basic things. So exercise is also really important, finding those things that you resonate with, that work for you, that are efficient. Because most of us, who are chanting our rounds every day and wanting to read something every day, don't necessarily have, time for an hour and a half, 2 hours of sadhana, and then an hour of yoga, and then an hour of, pranayam, in a day. So as devotees, we really have to, find those things that really are efficient, that work really well. Like over the years, I've found different exercises, different yoga postures that I spend probably 10, 15 minutes at the most every day. And then I'll do some others. I like to swim and I like to walk. And it's just me. There's some people like much more vigorous things, but doing something on a regular basis is really important that you find is quite efficient, especially if your priority is to hear and chant. You know, we can think of these things as you know, nourishing for the body and mind, so that we can have a clearer mind and intelligence, and that we have, you know, fewer distractions in the body, so that we can be present, you know, while we're doing these things. I think it's really important. So, you know, the main thing is tune into how things affect you. And then number two is, and sometimes we have addictions, you know. I mean, it could be, I don't know, as innocent as drinking grape juice every day or something. It's got a lot of sugar in it, or apple juice or whatever, or coffee or whatever it is. You know, usually we're going to suffer for 2 or 3 days when we're letting go of something that we know isn't good for us. But that's all it usually is. If you can get over it in 2 or 3 days, then you're over the hump. Then it's just a mental thing. But in terms of the physiological, you know, addiction aspect of it, like if somebody has a real sugar addiction, it may feel really challenging for 3-4 days, like almost torture to not eat sugar. But once you're over the hump and your chemistry changes a little bit, and that candida yeast that thrives on that sugar starts calming down and dying off a little bit, then you won't be so controlled by sugar. Sugar is a huge one. I mean, I think it's a huge thing that devotees, you know, the whole world really, but devotees also need to be careful of, because especially these days with the, you know, the Kali Yuga food and the high amounts of sugar and everything, we have to be careful, because we can also become victim of the culture.
Can I just add to that, Prabhu, that just mention about how carbohydrates are basically sugar, as well as sugar being sugar?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's different perspectives on that. Yes, for some people, you know, well, I will say there is a difference between white sugar and eating, you know, vegetables or fruits that have, you know, fruit sugar in them or carbohydrate sugar in them, because at least they have, you know, they have it's like real fruit. Organic fruit it's an amazing packaged substance that if it didn't have the sugar in it, we would never eat those things, because it would taste so astringent and so bitter. So it has, you know, has a lot of medicinal benefits and health benefits. And of course, eating refined white sugar or corn syrup, or even agave syrup, which is like high fructose corn syrup, just because it's coming from a cactus, it's very, very, it's not good stuff. It's unhealthy, and it can cause fatty liver damage and all kinds of insulin resistance, and which can lead to diabetes. So these things are very challenging. Some people, if their diet's pretty clean, and the receptivity in their cells is pretty good to sugar, and their insulin levels are quite balanced, they can get away with eating whole grains. I know many people do fine with whole grains. Other people who have a sort of a diabetic tendency have to be much more careful, because those grains do turn into sugar, and then it'll spike up the insulin, because the insulin is what carries or knocks on the door of your cell and says, open up, cell, to the sugar, so that the cell can use the sugar for energy. But if there's too much of that, and insulin also has a very sort of corrosive effect on the cell. So too much sugar creates a spike in insulin, and you can say that insulin is kind of acidic, and it can actually injure the cell wall. And then what happens is the cells become resistant to insulin. So now you eat sugar, and then the insulin's knocking on the wall of the cell, and the cells are sitting there not doing anything. And then the body has to put up more insulin, and it knocks more and says, hey, you know, open up. And then it's not doing it. So then more insulin, finally the cell will open up. So then people develop something called insulin resistance, which is then just one of the steps that leads toward, you know, real diabetes. And diabetes is a very, very common disease in this age. It's huge, and it's one of the, you know, even with the viruses going around and all that, it's considered to be one of the major factors that contributors to those people that get really, really sick are from the people who have diabetic condition of some kind. So yeah, so if you're gonna eat grains, super important to eat whole grains. And you know, what I found is that people are more on the spectrum of like they've been eating sugar for a long time, their diet's been pretty poor, they tend to have high blood sugar levels, insulin resistant. They're not a person that's going to do well with grains right off. But I have seen people over time, once they've eaten really clean for a while, they've started a little bit of an exercise program, stopped putting toxins into their body, then eventually they can start eating grains and they don't have that same up and down reaction that they used to. So that's my thought on that.
Interesting. Okay, we have a lot of questions. Actually, I think we have more questions submitted for this on this subject than for any other time. We usually get a lot of questions, but we have a lot. So to get through as many as possible, I think from now on we'll try and do shorter answers, because I'm conscientious that we don't have so much time. The next person that I'm going to call on, I'm going to call on Hari Krishna Prabhu, who has a question, and he's going to ask his question live. So when you're ready, you can unmute yourself.
Haribol. Thanks, Nimai. Nice to see you. Nice to hear from you. So yeah, the question, I wrote it out very clearly, so I'll do that. So yeah, blocking the natural urges causes disturbance in the life air. Ejaculation is one of the 13 natural urges, or maybe 14. So how can we follow the regulation of no illicit sex if we are experiencing these urges and do not feel rightly situated to get married?
I knew someone was going to ask that question.
Sorry.
Okay, so the first thing really is that we're aspiring devotees. So I would say the first thing is the importance of sadhana and hearing and chanting and being in good association. Because there is the aspect of, we're not normal, right? Devotees aren't normal. We're coming at life from a very different perspective and angle than most people. And most people practicing Ayurveda, they're trying, it's almost like they want to create as much balance as possible to get to the sattvic platform, which will then hopefully make them eligible for some kind of higher consciousness, which will then make them one day ready, or to get to a certain point where they can actually practice bhakti. But we're coming at it, we're devotees, so we're meant to digest and transform things in a very different way than an ordinary person. Having said that, we have a physical body, we have conditioning, we have our limitations, we have our narthas, we have our impressions from before we were devotee. So number one, sadhana and hearing and chanting is super important, because that aspect will help us digest certain desires and impulses in the body that an ordinary person would not be able to digest. Not by our own power, but by the mercy of Guru and Garanga, right? By the mercy of Lord Nityananda, by the mercy of, by praying from the core of our hearts very deeply, and even with tears if we can find them, to help remove our anarthas. This is very important. And we're not just removing our anarthas so we can say I removed an anartha. We're removing our anarthas so that those things won't be obstacles to our bhakti. So, and bhakti is a natural process. So as we begin to have some taste for bhakti,
like we know, these other tastes will become less interesting. The other thing is, it's just, I don't know the verse exactly, but it's described that even if you're doing something that you're not happy about, or you're trying to fulfill a desire that you're not happy about, that we should be while it seems crazy, but while we're doing that very thing, to be feeling remorse and praying for help at the same time. Very paradoxical. Okay. Now, to get down to the basics of what you were saying, yes, these are real urges of the body. And, I'd love to hear what Bhagavad Maharaj would have to say about that too, because I do know that on the one hand, we've seen derangements in all spiritual paths, including ours, of people either that had strong tendencies, when they came in and they saw an opportunity and they took advantage of it, or they were really trying to control certain urges and they weren't able to, and by suppressing, they became even more perverted. So this is a danger of not acknowledging where you're at, and and then trying to over suppress, and then it can come out in a more perverted way. And so the epitome of that is child sexual abuse, where that's somebody feels the only place they can release that energy is with a child. And of course, it's very damaging. So we shouldn't be, I don't know. We have to be subtle and sophisticated about this topic. And I think if somebody's really struggling as a devotee, then we need to find a trusted friend and teacher and someone who really knows our philosophy and who can also discuss it, and you can reveal your mind and your struggles and your questions, because that will also help to digest something. If you're feeling guilty and shame and you're having desires and you don't know what to do with it, and you're trying to present yourself as a very strict brahmachari, but you're not able to do that, and you're off masturbating on the side, it's like it can make someone crazy, right? It's not a healthy scene. So what to do, if you can find a trusted person that you can have honest conversations with, it doesn't mean you have to go tell the world, but you need to work it out. And you need to figure out what is my right place and how do I better manage, because sometimes just being very honest with somebody helps you digest, whatever it is you're going through. Now, in terms of what is, what we're meant to do as devotees from a Shastric perspective on that, I would love to ask Bhagavad Maharaj and see if you would like to share something on that topic.
Yes,
No.
Bhagavad Maharaj, if you want to add something, really like to hear from you.
I just want to say I completely agree with your point about this, the need. This is one of the ways in Ayurveda. There's several different ways to resolve issues, and one of them is by taking higher counsel. And I'm going to be quite honest. I'm a sannyasi and I've been doing this for 50 years. I have somebody that I go to. When I have issues that I'm dealing with, there's somebody I confide in. And that's necessary. Everyone needs it. And we should see, even from Srila Prabhupada, he used to go and visit Srila Sridhar Maharaj and take his association. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj was always very keen to have the association of his godbrothers like Srila Puri Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhakti Daitya Madhav Maharaj. I remember one person telling me how when Srila Madhav Maharaj used to come to see Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he would come, he was the Acharya. He had so many temples and so many disciples, but they could hear when they were in the room alone, they'd be laughing and joking and talking. They'd hear a side of him that no one would ever see when he was out in public. And then when he come out of the room, again, he was the Acharya. So he needed that outlet as well. He needed that godbrother time with a senior Vaishnava to let let the laundry out, and feel relief from all the things that he pent up inside. So everybody needs it. There's no shame in going to someone for counseling or advice. Just feel confident and trusted, that you trust the person with your confidential information about your life and your problems, and that you can express it to them, and they can help you with the right mood. I have this with many people that I counsel, and then I also have someone I go to when I want to talk about my own things that I'm dealing with, and this is important. It's absolutely important. So it's a very healthy way of dealing with it. You need to do it, and you need to focus on it.
Is that helpful, Hare Krishna Prabhu?
I think mostly it's a very, yeah. Yes, thank you.
I mean, yeah, it's like, we're in the material world. And we're always going to have desires, and we're never going to be fully satisfied until we, really take shelter of and receive the mercy and
yeah, it's like as devotees, do we have to take the regulations fully, or like, is there, can you ever argue on the basis of health, oh, I shouldn't follow the regulation for this and this reason? Or is the regulation the kind of standard thing that you should follow, and then everything follows from there? Because my Gurudev says I should follow all the 4 regs, and it's like, well, I can't. So like, where do I stand now as a devotee?
Well, then you pray to.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a decision we've made, right? We've made the decision our goal is not just to be mentally and emotionally happy in this world. And if we want that, then we can follow certain teachings of Ayurveda. We've decided we want to become eternal servants, to remember our true identity as eternal servants of Radha and Krishna. So this is a sacrifice. This is the yajna. We're making a sacrifice. So there is a sacrifice that we have to make. And one of those is around managing the sexual energy. And the truth is, many devotees struggle with this. And, to different degrees at different times. So, there's even, in our teachings, we can see it hidden here and there that, yes, if you're having problems, do this. I mean, it's expected. It's in one sense, in terms of the society, it's expected that nobody has problems. And that's sort of like the understanding that nobody has these desires except for me. I'm the only one that struggles with this. Everyone else is so pucka and so perfect in every way, except for me. That's kind of how we tend to think about it. But the reality is that I'm not going to say everyone, and there's different people in different degrees have different struggles with different types of material desires. And I think it's not that we should sit around together as a group all the time and just talk about our material desires. It's much better to talk about here and chant, but to understand that, we're devotees and we have anarthas and we're on different stages of our development, and we have our issues. We have our issues. And if you have a slip here or there, does it mean that you're not a devotee? I would argue, of course, it still means you're a devotee on the path, and you're trying to get clear with what's, what works for me and what doesn't. The sexual one's a tough one because we're not meant to just be randomly, dispersing our sexual energy as devotees. I mean, there are other yoga paths that are much more lenient about that, but we happen to not be one that's super lenient.
It's a tough one because it's the root cause. It's why we came here in the first place, out of envy of Radha and Krishna's pastime. We wanted to enjoy in that way. And so it's the root cause of our very existence in the material world. That's one thing.
Yes.
Another thing is you have to remember that being on the path, there's this don't criticize someone who's in the shower that he's dirty. He's in the shower. You're getting cleaned off. It's going to take you time to go through all of this. Srila Prabhupada used to say, fall down is the pillar of success. So that's another thing, you make a mistake, but you learn from your mistakes. And then there's an old Kikuyu saying from Kenya, from the Kikuyu tribe. To trip is not to fall, but to move forward more quickly. So there's ways of looking at this in a different light, which can help you to take in the experience that you're having and make it a stepping stone to your spiritual success or emotional success. Also in Ayurveda, besides counseling, there is the meditation. You meditate on the anartha, lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion. You meditate on that anartha and you pray during the meditation that please move this away from my consciousness, move this out of my existence so that I can focus more. And then do your japa and try to, you make a step toward Krishna, Krishna, he'll make so many steps toward you. And just like they have the Anartha, the Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a process that they go through every morning. When they get up in the morning, they go to the bathroom and then they brush their teeth and they look in the mirror and they say, I'm an addict. I am an addict. And we're all addicts. We're all addicted to the material body and the material world and the material senses. We're all addicts. I'm an addict. I'm recovering. But just for today, I will not fall. Today, I will be clean. So you can use that as a very good way of dealing with you, because to think, when you're thinking in your mind the whole rest of my life, or I'm not going to do this, that, or the other thing, it becomes overwhelming. But just for today, I'm going to be good. Today, I'm not going to fall to the addiction. And then at night before you go to bed, you look in the mirror and say, today I had a successful day. I'm not addicted today. I didn't fall to the addiction. And then you go to sleep, and the next day you start over, one day at a time. That's where that phrase comes from the Alcoholics Anonymous, one day at a time. Take it one day at a time. Don't try to become overwhelmed with a lifetime of perfection. If I'm good for one day, that's one day better,
Thank you, Maharaj. That was really great.
Yeah, thanks, Maharaj. Thanks, both.
Thank you, Maharaj. Okay, we don't have so much time, but so many questions, and I want to really hear answers from both of you on as many as possible. I don't think we'll have the chance to do all of them, so I'm going to ask that for the remaining questions that you limit your answers if possible. Obviously, if you feel inspired, I'm not going to be like super strict, but just if possible 3, 4, 5 sentences, and that way we're going to answer a lot of these questions, because there's a lot of great questions but a lot of also very particular personal questions, so ones that deserve more depth but that we don't necessarily have time for. So we're going to try and really quick answers from here on 3, 4, 5 sentences. Okay. After an accident and heavy surgery, physically there is probably a lot of internal damage, and so how much can one assist with medicine and diet and cure a certain condition with digestion, etc.? Bit vague, but
So I'll just mention really quickly, after a surgery, I mean, I do acupuncture. I love acupuncture for post-surgery because it disturbs the prana. It disturbs the whole system. It disturbs all the energetic pathways of the body significantly. So getting that aligned is really, really good. So if you don't have somebody who does acupuncture, sometimes even like good massage or energy healing or something energetic like that can be really helpful. But acupuncture is awesome. And by the way, acupuncture was part of Ayurveda, and the Chinese probably took it and evolved it in their own way. But it was in Ayurveda too. So it's not just a Chinese thing. So that's what I would say. And yes, diet and working with the energies would be a big help.
My quick 2 cents here is that there's a product called Rescue Remedy by the Bach Flower Remedies, and that people don't realize that's very good for the shock to the system. And every surgery and every tooth I've ever had removed, I apply Rescue Remedy. I don't need any follow-up pain relief. No follow-up pain relief. It calms down the shock to the system completely. I've had two hernia surgeries, and I've had several teeth removed. And you just apply the Rescue Remedy, calms down the shock to the system, rests the body, resets it, and helps you to deal with it without taking all those pain relievers that are just poison for your body.
really nice. Okay, next question. I have heard whatever we desire to eat, we should avoid. Could you please expand on this, if it is true? I am a kapha dominant and love sweet and heavy foods, which I know I should avoid. Does this suggest an imbalance? And on the flip side, if we are balanced and in equilibrium, will we then desire the food that we actually need?
Yeah, that's so he said it, he or she said it pretty much, where the more out of balance you are in whatever, generally the more you're going to crave those things that like increases like. So if I'm really out of balance, I'm going to probably crave those things that are going to contribute to that. So it's a little bit like, you know, if I'm an alcoholic and I drink alcohol, that makes me want more alcohol, you know. So if I'm a kapha and I'm drinking my milk and pudding every day, I'm going to want more and more and more, then more out of balance. So yeah, so the more we, and this is why, like for instance, doing a cleanse or doing some kind of a guided program, you know, clear the palate, then all of a sudden you can come from a place of more balance. And that's when the innate intelligence starts kicking in, and you actually start noticing, oh, this makes me feel that way and this makes me feel better. So you do need to clear the palate. So yes.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. Perfect.
Okay, that's fine, because we have lots of questions, so there'll definitely be more, Maharaj, which you will have some things to add. Okay, this is coming from Harry Priya in New Zealand. Says, Dandavats, recently I was overwhelmed with grief from my mother passing. I have ended up with silent reflux. It has affected my voice. I've been using natural products and not pharmaceuticals. What else can I do? And then she goes on to say later, just adding to my question, I'm a Vata and I've changed my diet, avoiding foods that disturb my stomach. I'm not diabetic, but I have low blood sugar.
Did she say acid reflux?
Yeah. She
Yeah.
says silent reflux, so it's not, she's not necessarily feeling the burning. That's generally what I interpret that to mean. But she's having, there is some acid coming up. So I mean, the first thing would be some good digestive herbs to support good digestion. And then the other thing would be, you know, if you need some support, if you're in a lot of grief, then it could be partly doing some emotional clearing. You know, if there's some emotional work you need to do to just kind of help with the process of the grief, of letting it go.
Yeah, you could also, well, I can digest the herbs, calming the reflux, peppermint tea, spearmint tea, ginger tea, uh, and then if there's burning, you can use marshmallow herb or bala. Those are all good things for calming that. Uh, there is Shankabhasma in Ayurveda we use, which is the powder of the conch shell. That the one you blow in the morning for the arti. So that they make a powder of that, and that's very good at reducing the acidity. One thing to be careful of: burning in the stomach for a vegetarian can indicate low B12 levels. So you wanna get some B12, two to 3,000, 4,000, because that a day for a while to get things back to normal. Because I had that experience myself when I tried to be vegan, and I got really, really bad. I wasn't creating blood platelets properly or anything. So get
I
that
think
B12.
Marmite has B12 in it.
Yeah, Marmite is there. You can use Marmite, but if you want to measure it, you can get this a lot. And you want to use you don't want
Methylcobalamin.
to use cyanocobalamin. You don't want to use cyanocobalamin. You want to use methylcobalamin, not cyanocobalamin. Use methylcobalamin. That's the better one.
Mm, yeah, I've heard really heard about the importance of B12, and actually I've personally had problems now with B12, and I recently got a blood test and my B12 is very low, and even from maybe 2-3 weeks of taking B12 supplements, I've noticed a massive improvement in my energy already. It's much better. So yeah, really recommend, because it can be a big issue for anyone on a vegetarian diet. Naturally, yeah. Sorry, go on, Maharaj.
They have records of meat eaters even having problems with B12 levels because they don't eat properly. So if a meat eater can get it, what to speak of?
Interesting. Okay, our next question, which is slightly, I think, relates to some things Nimai Chaitanya Prabhu was saying earlier, which is a deep question, a little bit vague, probably difficult to cover in 4 or 5 sentences, but we're going to try to anyway. The question is, how can one who is traumatized from childhood lead a normal life as a devotee?
Okay, so basic thing, go back to digestion. If there's any way that if someone has indigestion, they're not digesting something, right? You take an herb or something to calm down the indigestion, help you improve digestion. There's nothing wrong, if you're a devotee and there's something that keeps coming up in the emotional body, there's nothing wrong with getting some help to digest it. But it doesn't mean the memory will be gone. It doesn't mean that it won't be somewhat of an issue. But if you can digest it better, and there are technologies and healing modalities, and in Ayurveda and also in other modalities that can actually help with the digestion of trauma. So then the work is doing the sadhana, doing your hearing and chanting, and giving it up to Krishna, letting Krishna help you digest things too. So without saying too much, that's how I'll leave it.
Thank you. Maharaj, do you want to add anything?
No, that's good. Let's move on.
Oh, okay. Also, another question where you could say a lot, but we don't have so much time. How would you suggest I increase my energy to do my service?
for each person, that's different. I mean, there's the influence of tamagun, which is, the item or the particular influence that causes someone to be a little, how would you say, not lazy, but lethargic, um, uh, hesitant, in doing what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. That affects you on a subtle level, and that turns into a gross physical level problem. But in terms of just sheer physical energy to the body, there are a number of things, depending on your constitution, that you can use, like different kinds of ginseng, rhodiola, what is it, ashwagandha, a number of different things that you could use to give yourself astragalus, to give your body some energy, a lift, a pickup. Siberian ginseng, they're all very helpful for giving your body a pickup if you need it a little bit. But if you're a young person, you shouldn't need things like that. You should be able to function better.
And I would just add, look at your life and see, are there certain things that, are toxic substances on some level that you're ingesting on a regular basis? Is it things you're listening to or reading or hearing or television or ingesting? So just, clear that out for the most part and see what happens.
One more point: if you have significant kapha in your body, significant of that dosha, my personal experience is going on a low carb or keto diet massively increased my energy levels hugely, as did intermittent fasting. So eating for not eating after 6 and then eating the next day at say 10 o'clock in the morning, it's a 16-hour fast. If you do the combination of those two, you'll see an immediate, I would say, 50% increase in energy levels for kapha. Anyhow, I don't know about the other doshas.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Awesome. Okay. Next question.
Rati Kala asked me if I can speak a little bit for a few minutes about avoiding talking during Prasadam Seva.
Okay, you can speak. You can have a couple sentences, Maharaj.
Yeah. I just want to say that Srila Prabhupada did spend some time training me how to cook, and during that time, he never talked in the kitchen when he was cooking. He just pointed to things and handed me things, and he would just, or he would say that, or like that. It was like very little talking, making the prasadam. And then during eating prasadam, I've eaten with Srila Prabhupada on a number of occasions, and he didn't chat while he was eating. He would eat his meal quietly, and when he was finished, then he may say a few words, but he was not a chat. It wasn't like he was holding a big conversation while eating dinner or lunch or whatever. He was very, very, very quiet while he was eating his lunch. Very quiet. So I think you're supposed to meditate. My understanding, you're supposed to meditate on the prasadam as being Krishna's mercy.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much. Okay, the next question. If I eat excessively spicy food, oregano oil, chili, sorry, that's oregano for you Americans, which I didn't know was spicy. Maybe it's spicy in America. Okay, if this person eats these spicy foods, they get an intense mucus reaction. How can you explain that?
If something is burning to the system, very spicy, one of the ways that the body protects itself is by creating mucus. That's a response. It's an immune response. So it doesn't happen to everybody, but this particular person, that would be my understanding, is that it's a challenge to the stomach or the tissues, and then the body creates phlegm as a response to protect itself from the spice. It's also possible that, you know, within the tissues, it could be releasing some toxins, but it generally wouldn't, I don't think, would be as immediate of a reaction in that way. I think it's more of a reaction to the challenge of the spice, of the hotness, which then the body will respond with mucus. Does that make sense, Maharaj? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, it's the body's natural response to inflammation is to create kapha, mucus. Natural response.
You know, this drug like Advil, these drugs, one reason they're so dangerous is because it prevents the body from reacting.
Exactly.
It stops the process of reaction. So it does the same thing, you know, when you're running, you know, your knees are creating liquid or oily substances to protect, creating kapha in the knee. But Advil will stop that process and make you think, oh, I'm in no pain whatsoever. But meanwhile, it's degenerating the tissues at the same time. Same thing in the stomach. That's why people get acid or, you know, bad stomachs from taking those drugs, is because it stops the mucus lining from responding to food. So over time, they get a acid stomach.
Yeah.
That's
all these things over and over again, you know, they've been proven to be, you know, the whole Western system of medicine has just been proven to be a scam. They make you take all these drugs that stop your pain, your joints deteriorate, then they give you a knee replacement. I mean, it's just a scam. The whole thing is a scam. You buy into Western medicine, it's a scam. As much as possible, I remember Prabhupada telling me, don't take me to the hospital. No matter what happens, don't take me to the hospital. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should avoid the hospital no matter what, but the idea, I just saw a quote today where Prabhupada said, I mean, he told me directly, don't take me to the hospital. He said, I'm counting on you, pointing to me and Gargamuni, I'm counting on you to take me to Vrindavan. We said, don't worry, Prabhupada, we'll make sure you go to Vrindavan. So the thing is, you know, you got to be careful. These people are very dangerous, very, very dangerous. I go for testing. Other than that, I don't take their drugs. I don't take any of their things.
Interesting. I just wanted to add on to what Nimai Caitanya Prabhu was saying. Advil is ibuprofen. So I wasn't familiar with the brand name Advil, but I am familiar with ibuprofen. Someone's messaging me in capital letters, very dangerous. Okay, so that's interesting because I saw it as quite a kind of casual thing. But yeah, interesting. Okay, so our next question is, what is good for the body on a regular what exercise is good for the body on a regular basis? And okay, wait, it's two-part. I'll just ask the next part afterwards, because it's completely separate. Okay, yeah, any recommendations? Football, cricket?
Again, it depends on the individual. You know, for Vata people, running and basketball is good. For Pitta people, playing tennis and games like that are good. For Kapha people, playing American football. Or for Vata people, playing soccer, you know, running up and down, run, back and forth, you know, wherever there's movement, that's what makes them happy. So, you know, of course they get tired quickly, but that's the nature of Vatas. They want to move a lot and then they get tired quickly. So, you know, you choose an exercise that suits your particular body. Although you could go against type and say, okay, well, since I'm I'm a Vata, I need to do some weightlifting in order to build muscle. Or since I'm a Kapha, I need to do some movement and running instead of just doing weightlifting. So those are things that you would do against type in order to try and help your constitution function better. And so, yeah, it would be great for a Kapha to get out and run a little bit, even though it's exhausting for him to do it. And it would be great for a Vata to do some muscle building, with weights, even though they find it boring and difficult to do. So those are things. And it'd be great for Pittas not to be so egotistical when they play games.
Hey,
Not good for Pitta to go to hot yoga and compare themselves with everyone else to see how buff they are.
Yes.
Did you want to add anything, Nimai, Caitanya, Prabhu?
Personal thing, for sure. And, again, as devotees, doing something is good. I mean, moving the body moves the energy, moves the chi, moves the blood. And this is a good thing. Breaking a sweat is a good thing. So that's the general principle. And it's just healthy to do. And also because in Kali Yuga, so many of us are sitting behind a computer all day. We're not out working on a farm. We're not walking as much. And, but just moving the body, walking is great. I mean, it's not super cardiovascular, but it's moving is really important. So we have to add exercise where in other times, if you're out in the fields, then you're working hard, every day. It's different now.
Okay, the second half of the question was, when should we stop eating at night?
I would say, about 4 hours for taking rest. And also it's better to, it's what you eat at night, you wear in the morning. So whatever you eat at night, you will feel it in the morning. So if you eat, at 10 o'clock at night, you will definitely feel that. It's better to stop eating around 6 or 7 at night and, taking rest before midnight. The sleep before midnight is the best sleep. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I agree. I generally finish eating somewhere between 4 and 6 every night. And I get to bed around 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Perfect. And also the principle of, in general speaking, eat like a prince or princess in the morning, a king or queen at noon, and a pauper in the evening. It's better. Now that's a general principle. Because if we eat a lot at night, depending on our constitution, if you have very strong digestion, not as much of a problem. But if you don't have a great digestion at night, then guess what? You're going to wake up in the middle of the night. You're going to have a lot of bizarre dreams, things like that. I remember a friend of mine said that every time I have pizza at night, I have pizza dreams. And I thought he was crazy. But, I remember having, eating pizza like 10 o'clock at night and having all kinds of bizarre dreams and waking up in the morning feeling horrible. So.
Would be a good thing to get for another session on Ayurveda, or we could get a control group to all eat pizza at 10 o'clock at night and report back on their findings. Although we weren't
in the name of science, you want to do Pragya opera.
Well, we won't ask Nishimha Prabhu, who's gone 75 days or so without pizza.
Yeah.
As we've seen on Facebook.
Has he gone 75 nights though? How about the nights?
Yeah, we're asking. You've got X amount of days, but if it's at 10 o'clock, will you eat pizza in the name of science?
I'm trying really hard.
It's inspiring. It's very inspirational. That's why I thought I'd mention it. And I think that's a relevant point for health, is to be in, like, any positive change is to be inspired to go out and make difficult choices, to make change in that way. So our next question is in a meal, we eat various foods. Okay. How to identify which one is making us feel tired and sluggish?
Well, that's one, if you have an Ayurvedic assessment that can help. But this is where, this is why I tell people all the time when they do a cleanse, and an Ayurveda recommended to cleanse twice a year, do some kind of something in the fall and the spring, especially because it's when the body likes to detoxify and let go. But by clearing the palate and eating really simply for a number of days, and that means generally speaking, no wheat, dairy, sugar, refined carbs, eating really simple over 2-3 week period, then when you bring certain things back in, you'll start recognizing, oh yes, this was the thing that was causing some issue for me. Now modern wheat, for instance, some people are fine with it, but a lot of people since the 70s are having problems with wheat because they hybridized it into different protein structure than it used to be. So like einkorn, ancient wheat, the wheat of Ayurveda is most people are fine with it unless they're true celiacs. So, but by clearing the palate and then only eating that one food, don't bring in the wheat, the dairy, the sugar, the tomatoes, the pizza all at once. You just do one food that you hadn't eaten for 3 weeks and you eat that for 3 days, along with those other foods, and see how you feel. It may be mental. A lot of people are sensitive to foods. It's a mental thing. Their neurology is impacted. They get a little depressed. They get a little low mood. They get a little, grumpy. And they don't even know that it's from something they're eating. So avoiding it and then, experimenting. I would say that's probably one of the best ways.
Awesome.
Right.
Maharaj?
Yeah. Go to the next question.
Okay.
Tired.
You're tired. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I think we have time for one last question. Well, there's another practical question after that, but one last question from the panelists. What is the connection between looking after our health and controlling the mind to progress in bhakti?
Well, I would say from the perspective of obstacles. So what are the obstacles to, even what is hatha yoga? It's removing the obstacles. One metaphor is if you have a potential for 100 watts and you're only functioning at 70 watts because there's all kinds of things that you're putting into your organism that are down, bringing down the vibration of those watts, then you're only functioning at 60-70%. So if we're eating things that bring us down energetically and that affects the brain and the mind and the nervous system and the prana, the chi, everything, if it affects us, then it's going to bring our energy down and our mental clarity. And we're not going to be able to, we're going to be much more distracted. I can tell you that there are certain foods that literally will cause some people just to go brain dead. They can barely add. It's like giving them a drink of alcohol, for some people. So avoiding those things and eating nourishing food as much as possible can oftentimes, raise someone from a 60-watt bulb to an 80-watt bulb or 90-watt. And then you have to do some fine tuning and individualization of your own body type. But we're in Kali Yuga. So many things are toxic these days. So many things. So we have to.
Prabhupada himself said, first, health. He wrote it out on a piece of paper and put it on the wall. Number 1, health. Number 2, chanting. Number 3, service. Number 4, reading. And he gave this as the system. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I cut my foot once on the beach in Juhu, and I had it all wrapped up in a bandage. And I came to Guru Puja that morning, hobbling into the temple room on the bandaged foot. And there was 80 people offering Prabhupada Guru Puja. I came late. he saw me. He moved forward on the Vyasasana and called me over. He asked me, he said, "Are you all right? Is everything okay?" I said, "I cut my foot." He said, he said, "Have you gone to the doctor?" I said, "Yes, I went to the doctor. He bandaged it. He put medicine." He said, "So you're feeling better?" I said, "Yes, I'm okay now." I'm going to go and visit the doctor again today. Prabhupada said, "Okay." He said, "If you need anything, you come to me directly, and I will personally take care of you." This is how important Prabhupada felt about health. You know, I was a 24-year-old boy that had gone all the way to India and sacrificed my life in his service in India. And he wanted me to know that he was concerned about my well-being. And we should have that kind of concern for each other's health and each other's well-being. We should love each other as a family in the same way that Prabhupada and Gurudev loved us. This is very important.
Beautiful. And I would say in terms of with devotees, you know, it's so important. If we're doing our sadhana, if we're associating, if we're hearing and chanting, spending a little time on taking care of the body is not, I don't think of it as Maya. It's a necessity. And what you're saying is Prabhupada didn't either. You know, sometimes this idea is that, oh, I can just completely forget about the body. We're not there yet. You know, I'm not. So it's not Maya, it's important. And if we're in good association, or, you know, even via a Zoom association, by getting good association, then we're not going to be too obsessed with the body, or that will diminish. But we still have to take care of it.
So, Nimai, we've been given this body by Krishna in human life to have relationship with the divine, with Krishna. So it's incumbent upon us to look after his property. Our body is his property. Our body is Gurudev's property.
That's what he said to Sanatan Goswami. You can't kill yourself.
Yes.
It's my body. It's not your body.
Beautiful. Okay.
Does that answer the question, whoever asked it?
Yeah, well, I think I can say I answered the question very nicely. I don't know if they're an anonymous person. We'll hear back from them. But thank you so much for your answers. It's been such a pleasure. There's even more questions, but I don't want to take up too much time. But before we go, I just want to ask Nimai Caitanya Prabhu. A few different people are asking whether you give regular talks on or courses on looking after health. Someone asked if you offer classes that build on this practical approach to applying medicine to the practice of bhakti. Someone's asking about practical daily health tips and practices that aren't so technical.
Yeah,
I know you have a YouTube channel as well.
YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel, I think it's Jonathan Glass, Ayurvedic practitioner. That's my name, Jonathan Glass. Also, my book, Total Life Cleanse, it's about 400 pages, and it has, you know, pretty much everything that we talked about today is in there somewhere. All the information about the elements and the doshas and cleansing and how to do all that. And it was really written for, you know, I always kept the devotees in mind when I wrote this book. You know, it was for everyone, but I mean, there's some great stuff there, and not that devotees need to hear it, but it's some really good preaching material, I think, around vegetarianism and consciousness, and, you know, how I kind of preach to my students and clients in sort of a gradual way, but direct way as well. But there's a lot of information there. And I'm happy to send anybody who wants to contact me, I'll send you some videos and some links for free, no charge for that. And,
so after this session, Tarun, let's post it in Holistic Bhakti WhatsApp chat, because that will remain, whereas the Zoom stuff disappears. We can post your book link on Amazon in the Holistic Bhakti chat and also your YouTube YouTube channel.
Sounds good. And you can put my email too, if anybody wants to contact me, I'm happy to offer, you know, something. To anybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. We'll get those details from you and then we can post them in the WhatsApp group. So before we close this session, this two-part session, which has really been a pleasure, I want to say we've now been doing Holistic Bhakti for around 4 months. It's been around 4 months since our first session, and the positive responses we've been getting are overwhelming. We've had so much encouragement, so many responses, so many different people tuning in, sending messages saying how different things that they've heard have affected them in positive ways. We're now moving to hearing from our speakers again for a second time round, their second set of sessions. And we want for the people who are coming along, who are sacrificing this time to come and tune in, to really have an input in what Holistic Bhakti looks like in the future, what kind of topics they want to hear from, what sort of format they want to experience, things that they've liked, things that they don't like. So basically what we're asking for is feedback, and I'm gonna ask now, I'm gonna submit a link. I'm gonna submit this link again in WhatsApp on other platforms because we want to get as much feedback from everyone who tunes in as possible. So if you want to take the link that I'm just posting in the chat now, if you want to submit your suggestions, your feedback, your criticism, we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to incorporate what you're saying into the future. So yeah, please get in touch in that way so that we can continue to improve and innovate this format and these sessions to serve this process and serve everyone's bhakti in this way. So we're now going to finish. I really want to thank everyone who's made these two particular sessions possible. I want to thank Sripad Bhaktivedanta Bhagavat Maharaj and Shriman Nimai Caitanya Prabhu, especially for giving beautiful talks, for giving time, energy, and answering these questions and being so patient and giving such thoughtful answers. So my dandavats to you both, and thank you so much. And I know on a personal level, it's been very helpful. I feel more inspired to tune in and get more in touch with my health. So thank you so much. Sorry, I think my earphones might have died. Still hear me? Can you still hear me?
It's all right, it's fine, Tone.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna continue. Let's see.
No, can't hear you now. You're gone. You're gone.
Okay, I'm gone now. Okay, can you hear me again? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank my dear friend, Hare Krishna Prabhu, who helped in the background pull the strings, organize these sessions together, help put them together. He put up with all my different requests, all my different difficulties, moving around speakers and last minute changes, and he managed it all really nicely, really expertly. It was such a pleasure to work with you, Prabhu. We've done this seva together, we've done other sevas together, and I look forward to all of the seva in the future that we have to do together. I'm sure we'll have long lives of seva serving together, and I really look forward to it. So thank you so much, Prabhu. It's such a pleasure. I want to thank Yashodanandan Prabhu once again for all of the ways he makes his service possible.
This is good. We can't hear any of that. That's good. Can't hear any of it.
I can't hear you.
That's fine. Can't hear a thing.
They're thanking you for
Which gives,
being the
which gives me the
organizer.
opportunity, because we can't hear you thanking me. Thank you, Tarun, for your enthusiasm, excellent emceeing, and your just beautiful heart. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you
on
so
behalf
much.
of Tarun, I would just like to say thank you to Shodanand and Prabhu for overlooking the whole project and just for being so wonderful and lovely and brilliant for everyone.
Sodananda Makri ki jai.
Yeah. Nimai Chaitanya Prabhu ki jai.
Oh,
Bhagavad
by the way,
Maharaj ki jai.
we had 42 devotees out for Sankirtan last Saturday. So
All
those
right.
of you who are in London, or even if you're in England, please come this Saturday. Let's get to the 50 mark. Yeah, be amazing.
At some point, I'm just gonna fly over and show up because this is too exciting.
It is exciting. Maharaj, our goal is to get to 108. We want to get to 108.
That is a cool idea.
Yeah.
Maharaj, you got to be careful coming, because if you come, we might not let you leave.
I'd like to change. I'd like to dispute the word might.
Haribol.
We'll take away your passport, Maharaj, and we might take away your shoes.
My shoes.
It's great. Can everyone unmute now and we can all chat?
Wait. I'm not done yet. I'm not done.
Sorry.
I also want to thank Janardhan Prabhu for putting together the posters.
Janardhan, Dandavats.
He's been putting together the posters for the last few weeks, but for these sessions, I think he's done a really, really nice job. If you saw the posters on Facebook, on Instagram, on WhatsApp, I think you'd agree with me there.
Yeah, they're nice colors.
Yeah. Really nice. And I want to thank, last but not least, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in.
Yeah.
They've been really great sessions. And yeah, especially today with all of these different questions, it was a real pleasure to ask them all and hear these beautiful answers. So Vansha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Haribo.
Haribo.
All right, good night, everyone.